Hello, everyone. Jim Coventry from RotoWire here, going over some unexpected week one performances and hopefully giving you some fantasy advice that you can use going forward into week two as well. Maybe even the waiver wire for some of these guys. All right, let's start out. James Robinson, 11 carries, 66 yards and a touchdown. One catch for a 3-yard touchdown reception. James Robinson had an amazing game coming off an Achilles injury in December. Started. Now, the good news for both James Robinson and Travis Etienne. James Robinson played very well. He's considered their starter. That was said during the week. The coaching staff held true to that. No reason Robinson relinquishes that. However, Travis Etienne played well. And Travis Etienne actually outsnapped Robinson 51% to 49. So at least as this goes, this isn't a 1 and 2. This is a 1A, 1B situation. And so they'll definitely alternate games doing well. Certainly game script, things will change here and there. But both of them are relevant. Now, of course, fantasy managers that selected Travis Etienne with a 3rd-round pick, maybe a 4th-round pick, they're going to be a little bit frustrated because right now they were expecting it to be Robinson as a bit player, and right now that's not the case, and I see Robinson getting better, not worse, so I think this is going to stick for quite some time. Hey, Kevin. All right. Aaron Jones was the next unexpected performance, and it really was due to the way the game went. He had 5 carries for 49 yards, unreal, like 10 yards a carry, 3 catches for 27 yards on 5 targets. Now, I had said before the season, aside from Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones is their best, most versatile weapon. And I felt that they would have to use him as a receiver to really make the offense have a chance to be strong. They were without both offensive tackles in that game, so they were running at a big disadvantage. And yet they chose, despite falling down 17-0 at the half, A.J. Dillon had 15 touches. Jones had 8. Now, Jones played more snaps. So that was fine. But the fact that they weren't moving Aaron Jones around the formation, weaponizing him, giving Aaron Rodgers something to work with, I thought that that was borderline irresponsible. That said, I can only say I'm hopeful. They realize that they got beat up by a divisional opponent. They have to realize that Aaron Jones needs to get involved. I imagine they'll fix a number of things. The Packers have had games where they've looked bad in the past. Actually, in the last couple of years, there was a game each year where Aaron Rodgers and the offense looked really bad, and they snapped right back. Dillon's a great player as well. I think he and Jones both have to be heavily involved. But that said, Aaron Jones, if the Packers don't weaponize him, they are going to have a long season. Same game, Justin Jefferson, 184 yards and 2 touchdowns against a strong Packer secondary. There's a couple ways to look at this. Jefferson's great. We know that. And they're using him in that Ram-style offense to scheme him open and get him in space. That worked out really well. But the Packers really did not seem to make a commitment to understanding that Justin Jefferson, who they play twice a year, they did not have any intention of doing anything special to slow him down. He was caught up on linebackers on plays, safeties on plays, and there's Jair Alexander, frequently nowhere near him. That was a little bit crazy. Look, Justin Jefferson's going to have a great season. There's no question. We know his floor is probably 1,600 yards right after last year, probably matches that. But that said, the Packers did lay an egg on defense here. Jefferson's great, but I just think that if they played a second time around, this may be more like 110, 115 yards, which is still amazing, bonkers numbers. But I just think that, kudos to Jefferson. I love him, but I think that game was really, really crazy. It's a combination of things. So, Allen Robinson, everybody wants to know about why did Allen Robinson go 1 catch for 12 yards. There were 2 things going on here. First of all, the Rams got blindsided. First of all, Andrew Whitworth retired, and they thought Noteboom, who replaced him well in spots when he was needed. He did well. But then we also had a 3rd-string guard playing. Logan Bruss was out. He suffered an injury, and they were already down to a 2nd-stringer at that point. And then the Bills have such a diverse, deep pass rush, and they added Von Miller. So the big problem is that now they play a great zone. Their safeties and their corners, even without Tre'Davious White, they're very disciplined in their zone. And then the pass rush was coming. So it wasn't like a typical soft zone. And so what happened was Stafford was under siege, and the only thing he could do was go to what he knew, and that was Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee. He had to go to familiarity at that point because they were just basically wiped out of what they wanted to do. That's going to settle down. Robinson's going to be fine. They're not going to play pass rushes like the Bills. Again, the point of the Bills, not just Miller, but it's the deep rotation of rushers. They're always fresh. So I'm not really worried about Allen Robinson. I think everything will be fine there. He's a player to trade for because fantasy manager that drafted him is probably really down on him. Players coming off a bad week one, if you believe in that player, it is a buying opportunity. But I don't think it's a buying opportunity for CeeDee Lamb. And I was high on him, obviously. 2 catches for 29 yards on 11 targets. Obviously, with Dak Prescott out anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. You heard 6 to 8. Now they're not putting him in injured reserve. Don't know what's going to happen there. But look, CeeDee Lamb, again, coaching was not used creatively. They had to find ways to manufacture touches and get the ball in his hands. He got 11 targets, but nothing was creative about his usage. It was very basic usage. The Buccaneers were very easily able to diagnose what was going on. It was just a very, very poorly called game. And then obviously once Prescott went out, it was curtains from there. CeeDee Lamb is going to struggle while Prescott's out. There's no question because the quarterback play drops a million miles and defenses know Lamb's the one guy they really got to worry about. But I don't think there's any downfield passing game because we already knew that offensive line was in shambles and they lost another lineman early in the game to a high ankle sprain. And questions in there, I'm going to get to all of these questions and comments, so hang with me. Definitely want to talk to everybody. And I'm going to get every one of those, so hang with me. All right, the next one, Christian McCaffrey was a very surprising stat line. He scored that touchdown. He had a few different shots at scoring, finally punched one in. But the fact he had 10 carries for 33 yards and 4 catches for 24 yards, that was not a Christian McCaffrey stat line. 14 touches, we're probably expecting about 85, 90 yards on him. He got 57 yards. Not that impressive. In the defense, look, the Browns, great pass rush with Myles Garrett, great secondary. I don't see them as a great run defense. And I don't see them great, their linebackers great in coverage. So I don't know what quite was going on in McCaffrey, but that was not a game we typically see out of him. Many people were drafting him at the 101 as the summer went on, especially like in the tournament leagues. Things could change, 1 game sample size, but I did not like what I saw out of McCaffrey in week 1. Hopefully he turns it around quickly. Michael Carter is the next one. And there was the talk about during the week, the Jets staff saying he's our number 1 back. And I know Breece Hall investors had to be really frustrated at that, but they probably didn't believe it a lot. But Michael Carter backed it up. 10 carries for 60 yards, 7 catches for 40. Now, Breece Hall was right there, 6 catches for 38 yards. And now as a rusher, 6 for 23. So, again, that's almost 4 yards a carry. Breece Hall was just fine, but Michael Carter played very well. So this timeshare doesn't probably change right now. And the targets, man, Joe Flacco was a dump-off machine. Carter targeted 9 times, Breece Hall 10. Just a lot of balls being thrown to the running backs. So right now, I think that mix is going to stay there for a while. And I think both backs can be really good here. But in the games that they trail, it's going to be even better, especially if a lot of screen passes are going to them. And I don't know, when Zach Wilson gets back, I don't know how much he throws there, but that's very important there as well. Mike Williams next, 2 catches for 10 yards on 4 targets. And that was with Keenan Allen going down in the second quarter. The weird thing was that the Chargers and Justin Herbert threw exactly 4 targets to 7 different receivers. That sounds like they had a plan to spread the ball around. I don't know why that is. I mean, Mike Williams, we learned early last year and late last year, when they get him involved, they throw him the ball downfield. He's not a burner, but his size allows him to win. It was very frustrating to see the lack of usage. It reminds us of that whole middle of last season when he was disappointing. Right now, I am very concerned because the offense should have had a plan coming out for Williams. They didn't. I am a little bit concerned here. Now, Curtis Samuel is next. And look, everybody's going to be like, oh my gosh, 1 game sample size. Forget it. 8 catches for 55 yards and a touchdown, 11 targets, 4 rushes for 17 yards. Remember when Washington acquired Curtis Samuel from the Panthers? Ron Rivera wanted him in, knew him from Carolina. The goal was to use him in many different ways to create disadvantages against the defense, not necessarily to feature Samuel, but to use him to make better matches for his opponents, but get him the ball in space. Well, they did. and they utilized him, and he was the most highly used Washington player. It's very possible that this usage continues because remember, that was their plan when they signed him. So he was hurt all last year. He's healthy now. And right now, you have to expect he's not maybe going to go through the ceiling every week, but he could be a 50-yard-a-week player for you in many weeks because he is dynamic in space. Carson Wentz is the next one. This is funny. 313 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. But he kind of created his own garbage time because he throws the interception to the defensive lineman, Trevon Walker. How do you throw a pick to a lineman? Doesn't happen much, but Wentz did it. But then that allowed them, they have another scoring drive because they had to keep pace and keep scoring. So anyway, good week for Wentz. We know the story. It'll be up. It'll be down. The weeks that, he just kind of loses it, it's going to happen. They're going to be there. But for right now, look, he's a Curtis Samuel. Even McLaurin was like the least targeted receiver with 4. Jahan Dotson scores the 2 touchdowns. So the good news is they have a diverse set of targets that do different things really well. And they even threw to Gibson 8 times out of the backfield. They almost ignored J.D. McKissic as a receiver. And that really worked out well for those that invested in Antonio Gibson. But that said, Wentz has weapons. Wentz typically doesn't like throwing to running backs. But the long catch that was made by Gibson was a downfield route. He started up the middle of the field and broke to the sideline, and it was like a literal out route, like a slot type of route. And it was very impressive. Gibson has receiver skills. We know that from his college days. And if they're going to plan to use him that way, they'll get the most out of him. The next surprising stat line, and again, I got all those questions. I will get to everybody at the end of this. Rashaad Penny, the fact that he only had 12 carries, he got 60 yards on him, and there was a holding call, and on a play he broke big. But here was the thing. I get it. The Seahawks won. Congratulations. I'm very excited for them. That very big win. But they got fortunate. There were 2 fumbles by Denver inside the 5-yard line, and they leaned on Geno Smith, who was just throwing these short passes primarily. I assumed they'd go with the game plan. Well, let's run the ball down their throats, shorten the game. It worked out for Pete Carroll, but they wanted to spite him, quite honestly. The Rashaad Penny needs to be, while healthy, the centerpiece of that offense. The passing game would be better working off the run. Again, they got away with one, but if they keep doing that, and that's not Pete Carroll's identity. I think Pete might be getting cute here because I think he was overthinking, thinking everybody knows I'm going to run. We're going to pass. It had to be because it's so out of Carroll's nature to run that game plan. All right, next one. Rex Burkhead, 14 carries, 40 yards. Dameon Pierce had 11 carries for 33, so close there, but 5 catches for 30 yards on 8 targets. So PPR, Rex Burkhead was killing it. 71% of the snaps for Burkhead. That was the point. And we were saying this in the offseason. I knew Pierce was the lead back, but I'm like, this was a positive game script. They were leading the entire game or tied. This was a game where you use your early down back, and yet it was Rex Burkhead as a receiver. So to me, they want to get this screen game going. That's game 1. It could change. That's what it looked like. But remember, the one thing I'll always say about Rex Burkhead, while healthy, he does all the little things coaches do. He'll run inside, do the dirty work. He'll block. He'll understand nuances in the offense. He understands how to run routes, not just be a dump-off screen player. So it's very hard for the coaches to sit him down if they don't have somebody that's like exponentially better. And with all those little things, he galvanizes an offense. Marcus Mariota was the next one that was a surprising game. Not that he went 20 for 33 and 215 yards, but 12 runs for 72 yards and a touchdown. Say what you will, but Arthur Smith is a very creative coach, and Arthur Smith tends to get a lot out of players that are kind of gimmicky. Designed runs for Mariota. It worked. It definitely worked. And he had some work going on with the new receiver. And so, you get the rookie involved, Drake London, and he played well. Now, Pitts was off in this game, but obviously the focal point of New Orleans was to slow him down, and they made a concerted effort to get after him. Now, with Drake London doing well, defenses may have to take a look at maybe both of them being dangerous. And so that might open up for Pitts. But Mariota is a runner. This is fantasy football. And if you're running for 72 yards, you're dangerous in fantasy football. The next one, Kyle Phillips. If you're looking him up on your waiver wire, it's 1 L in Phillips, not 2. If you type in Phillips like a typical, you're going to say no player available. You're going to think I'm crazier than you already do. Now, He led the Titans, 6 catches, 66 yards, 9 targets. We knew throughout camp he can be an amazing slot receiver. He's a player that can really step into this league and contribute. Did not think he would dwarf Robert Woods in targets. Everybody dwarfed everybody in targets. It was the Kyle Phillips show through the air. And it wasn't him, it was Dontrell Hilliard catching touchdown passes, right? But Kyle Phillips, if he establishes in week 1, he is a slot player. They're going to throw to the middle of the field. It looks like he could be a deal. Yes, I think you should invest in him in the waiver wire. I thought Austin Hooper would be the middle of the field guy, and it's a 1-game sample, but Kyle Phillips can run routes, and that may be ultimately where they prefer to go. They may decide to let their tight ends block a little more. The Donovan Peoples-Jones game was very surprising to me that he had 6 catches for 60 yards on 11 targets. Here was the thing. I expected with Jacoby Brissett and his limited arm, Donovan Peoples-Jones is an excellent downfield receiver. So I just said stylistically they're not going to mesh because we don't see Brissett throwing the deep ball with any consistency or drive. So that's just not going to work. Amari Cooper will run out routes underneath all day long. Donovan Peoples-Jones was catching short and intermediate passes. He had almost double the targets of Cooper. Now, will that continue every week? No, but Donovan Peoples-Jones will, based on 1 game, probably be productive in this offense. And when I'm just going to say the other guy comes back in week 12 to play quarterback and the other guy's there, Donovan Peoples-Jones becomes a deep threat as well. So he may be a player you want on your roster. Now, I do have to talk about Isaiah Pacheco because people will look at the stat line. They'll be like, man, 12 carries, 62 yards and a touchdown. He's the leader in the backfield. He had more carries than McKinnon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire combined. Yes, he did. But it was all in garbage time. It was the CEH and McKinnon show. It was all about them. When the game was out of hand, Pacheco came in, basically took care of some garbage time, did well, not taking anything away from the young man. But if you look at stat lines and you're thinking you got yourself an RB1 here or a high-end RB2, that was not how it looked. I think he's going to be very, very game script dependent. And again, I think that Edwards-Helaire looked very good with his opportunities. And McKinnon is definitely a part of this offense. Not going anywhere. He's a receiving back. He'll get some carries as well. Zach Moss was a thing. 6 carries for 15 yards, 6 catches for 21 yards. Not a lot of yardage, but 6 catches. But it was still Devin Singletary who well outsnapped Moss. Moss out-touched Singletary, but Singletary out-snapped Moss. So I think it'll be some game script dependent things. I don't think Moss did so much that they're going to be like, oh man, he's the guy now. But if you need a running back, if he's going to have similar usage to Singletary, then you need him as a flex. James Cook fumbled on his opportunity. I don't know if he's going to see a lot of snaps. I don't know how much they trust him if he was benched for the fumble, but he was already the 3rd back in the game anyway. And then the last one, do not roster O.J. Howard. 2 receptions, 2 touchdowns. Beautiful. But here's what you got to say. He was way outsnapped by Brevin Jordan and Pharaoh Brown, and it was a fluke. Howard played I think it was like 15 snaps maybe, played very few snaps. It was one of those perfect storm things. It worked out. O.J. Howard might not score 2 the rest of the season. Look, if you like this content and you're not a subscriber at RotoWire, 2 days free access. Go over right now, rotowire.com/try. Check us out for free. See what we're about. If you like us, jump on. If not, we're happy you stopped by. Let's get some questions here. All right, let's go all the way back to the top here. So, Kevin, appreciate you being here. Yes, they do need Aaron Jones more involved in them. I hope they figure this out. This should have been figured out before week 1. Apparently it wasn't. Hopefully they get things right here. All right, let's see what else we got here. Yeah, hey, would I trade Miles Sanders and Waddle for Javonte Williams? Already have Judy, Deontay Johnson, Gabe Davis, Josh Allen. So you're pretty stacked there. All right. Javonte Williams was in a very dedicated timeshare. It wasn't as much as last year with Melvin Gordon. It was more like a 58-42% thing on the snap share. It wasn't like the 50-50 of last year. But that said, Gordon got a lot of premium touches. Now, they went very screen heavy in this game. I think both coaches overthought the game. And the amount of screen passes they saw. Look, Russell Wilson was not a screen game quarterback. I don't believe that's what he wants to be. So I think you're looking at they're not going to see that kind of pass volume. Javonte Williams right now is still in a timeshare. Melvin Gordon looks good. Miles Sanders looked very good. And behind that line, if he's consistent for them, and he got work in the red zone, and he was on some passing downs, so it wasn't the Kenny Gainwell show where I thought it might be. So right now, I think Miles Sanders for right now is a hold. And Jalen Waddle, I'm going to rethink this. Jalen Waddle, it was the Tyreek Hill show targets, and we knew that. They paid for him. They traded up for him, and they traded picks for him, and he was crying about his 159 targets in Kansas City not being enough. So they force-fed him targets, and they're going to have to because he's not going to be happy if he's not force-fed those targets. So Sanders doesn't stay healthy all the time either, so let's figure that in. So you know what? Now that that's said, I mean, Javonte Williams is a steady floor for you, but I hate giving up 2 potential starters. So, you have depth, but that depth gets questioned, right? Injuries happen, bye weeks happen. I think I'd hang on to the depth right now because unless Javonte's going to play 70% and, you get all the goal line work, but he's not, they're splitting that. It's close. Go with your gut. I'm going to say no because I think right now Sanders could have a good season. All right, Charlene, they need Lazard. Yeah, the best thing about Allen Lazard is his blocking ability. I mean, I was going to say it's not like a joke, but he's an amazing blocker. And that's the one thing that kind of hurts him because he's so reliable. The Packers receivers were missing blocks, the rookies. Oh my gosh, Romeo Doubs missed a really important block. And it's a lot of how they set up their offense. And so Lazard may not be the 9-10 target guy. There will be weeks where he gets that, but they value him so much as a receiver. And it's one of those things as fantasy managers like, but it's one of those things. But they do need Lazard. He's a big deal to them. All right, Kevin. Yep, Kevin O'Connell. Oh, yeah, he really did. He did a great job weaponizing the Minnesota offense. We're going to get a lot more out of Dalvin Cook this year, and we're going to get Justin Jefferson going to have his season. I do think they are going to be so committed when Jefferson's open just to get him the ball. They're not just going to say we're going to get the ball to Thielen and Osborne just because. If Jefferson's open, they're getting him the ball because he's their most explosive playmaker. So, Thielen and Osborne will have their games, but I think this is really going to be a very narrow tree of just the quarterback, the running back, and Justin Jefferson. All right, let's see. And George, you got ETN in the 5th. You have Devontae Smith on the bench. Cole Kmet is a starter. You're worried about. Don't be worried about Cole Kmet. If you guys join me on the Sunday live stream, the sit start stream, and that'll be on the RotoWire YouTube if you're on right now, or you're on the Twitter. We're on there too. 2 hours before kickoff, I'll answer your questions. But I talked about Cole Kmet. First of all, he had Fred Warner, who is like, in my opinion, the best tight end shutdown linebacker there is. And then you had the horrible weather in Chicago. The field was soup. I live 30 miles away. It was fine where I was at. So when they said rain, I'm like, okay, rain, it's an advantage to the offense. I had no idea because I'm streaming while this pregame stuff's going on, and I didn't realize the field was as bad as it was. Total pass that game, throw that game out for both sides. Throw it out for the 49ers, throw it out for the Bears. Didn't matter because that was an extreme weather game. We throw those out. Great question. Now the other ones, who else you got? ETN, look, I mentioned earlier too, ETN outsnapped Robinson, 51-49. So they're both going to be okay. They're both going to be okay. The 5th, since you got him in the 5th, better than the 3rd. Some people have him in the 3rd or 4th. So I think 5th round, I think you get a 5th round running back there. I think you're okay there. Robinson scored 2 touchdowns here. That'll flip. I think you're fine. And Devontae Smith, yeah, you're probably worried about Devontae Smith because I was concerned that basically I thought Goddard and A.J. Brown, the types of security, like the big catch radius of Goddard. And then A.J. Brown doesn't have that type, but it's one of those things where if you throw the ball in his area, he's just going to take it away from whoever's there. And I just think naturally that's where the passing game is going to gravitate. And Devontae Smith's not physical. And I think that's going to be problematic, especially when Hurts has these 2 amazingly physical weapons. So I am worried. He could end up with 650 yards after 920 last year. So I am worried. I would shop him. Somebody who loves that high pick out of Alabama, they might be like, you know what, we like him. So I would put out a trade offer. Some people are going to still want him. Kevin, Buffalo's O-line was unstoppable. The defensive line. Yeah, they're right. Just a deep rotation of rushers, a couple of them in their second year. You throw Von Miller in that mix now. Yeah, they're fresh. They come at you. They are going to be devil to deal with for offenses this year. A-Rob is a great buy low, yes, because like I said, I really explained that game away. It was Stafford was just desperate. And at that point, you go to what you know, and that's Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee. You're not going to see a team like Buffalo wreaking havoc like that. All right, let's see who's here. Charlene, if you look at the history about Green Bay offense, Rodgers is the most saved quarterback, the most sacked quarterback. So Rodgers used to have functional mobility in the pocket. You're right. When he was younger, he could, find a way to evade, but now he's older. That mobility is gone. And without their two starting tackles, I was very concerned. Again, in the live stream that we did before the game, I talked about that. I was very concerned about those tackles being out, and the Vikings could really bring outside pressure and really hem Rodgers in. And then the route combinations were very short. They were running. They didn't get Aaron Jones involved. It just was a bad storm. But remember this, as bad as it looks, Aaron Rodgers has always found a way to bounce back from horrible games. So I would bet on him against the Bears that big game. I don't know that's going to keep up week after week, but I think at Mad Aaron Rodgers, we're going to see him this week. He'll do something big this week. It'll be fun to watch. All right, Kevin. Samuel got paid. They're going to use him. Yep, and feature him. Yep, Ron Rivera's boy. You're right about that. Yep, 100%. All right, Charlene, hey, Kyle Phillips trying to pick him on the waiver wire. Well, fortunately, we don't have 2 million views, so hopefully you're all right in your league. We have some great followers, but hopefully it's not in your league. But yes, get Kyle Phillips. Do have some claims at him as well. Ronnie, how do I feel about Michael? So this is interesting. The touchdowns were great, and he looked great, and he looked physically beat AJ Terrell, and thought that was great too. The funny thing was, they didn't come alive until Atlanta was up 16 points in the fourth quarter. And then one of those things, the human mind, right? Atlanta checked out. You could tell their posture changed. They stopped playing defense. And all of a sudden now Jameis Winston had done nothing. It was Taysom Hill. The only offense was Taysom Hill, a couple of weird plays, but they did nothing. And then all of a sudden, with a checked out Falcons team that expected they win, of all teams that should never mail it in, it's them. But it's like human psychology, right? And so then that's what happened. So Michael Thomas didn't do much anything for 3 quarters either. So he looked great, but I'm still skeptical because I still think that it's going to be a team that wants to go running in defense. I think they lost their way a little bit. And I still think Jarvis Landry was a real deal there. He led the team in targets, yards, and receptions. And Olave's going to get some work. So I think ultimately Thomas just isn't going to be a target hog. But hopefully you got him in a decent place in your draft. I think Michael Thomas will get you 900 yards, maybe hit 1,000. I think he'll get you 7-8 touchdowns. He's got 2 in the bank already. So, but I think he gets that. But he's not going to be the Michael Thomas. But I think you draft him at a point where you're okay with that. So yeah, I think he'll be fine for you. And all right, who else we got here? Jalen Hurts is going on. Oh, I should click these. Idiot me. I could just click these. Sorry. Jalen Hurts is going off this year. Almost had a few rushing TDs to get ready. Yep. Yeah. He's the deal, man. He is the deal. And because they've given him A.J. Brown, and then now Dallas Goedert becomes a 2 for him. And then with that running, that offensive line is amazing, and defenses have to respect like everybody. And so there are so many plays that break down, and Hurts can just beat you with your legs or his arm. Yeah, he's going to have a great season for you this year. All right, Riley, now I'm finally clicking the questions. Albert will have a big year. Broncos use multiple tight ends, but when it mattered, he never left the guy, especially down the stretch. Right. He came close to that touchdown as well. And the goal was they were supposed to be moving him all over the formation. When they played him in that preseason game, all 4 quarters, I viewed that. I spun that against the grain of everybody else. Everybody was like, oh, man, he's in the doghouse. I didn't think so. I thought that if you're going to move him all over the formation, he's a second-year guy. He didn't do that. The only way to get him used to that is in live action, even if it's against deep backups. So that's all I thought that ever was. I do think if he's moved around, that plays to Wilson's strengths too. If he's a traditional tight end, that doesn't always work to Wilson's strength because he can't see the middle of the field in the short area. But if you're moving Okwuegbunam around, now you get him in different places. And then going forward, so I do. Yeah, Albert O should be just fine. Yeah. And then Kevin, I appreciate you, man. Glad you're here. And Crack Shot. Dulcich should be a good player. And, as much as we like Albert O, there's room for 2. They're going to play a lot of 2 tight end sets. It's not just going to be 1 tight end. They really want to run, 12 personnel, one running back, two tight ends. And so Dulcich would be on the field as well. And so that now it depends on the routes Dulcich runs, right? Because if Dulcich is just running straight routes down the middle, that's not Russell Wilson's sweet spot. Because again, I said he's short. He can't see the short, intermediate, middle of the field. So if Dulcich is running those routes, they could just be more clear routes. Where with Albert O moving around the formation, they figured out they got to get him away from Russell Wilson's weak spots. And so that's a consideration. But I do like Dulcich long term. Very talented player. And I think that's it. All right. Thanks for coming in, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we will talk soon. You can catch me on Twitter at Jim Coventry NFL. And remember, join the RotoWire team. 2 days free access. RotoWire.com/try.